Hi everyone, I'm Mirela Ciobanu, lead editor with The Papers, and we are live at the European Identity and Cloud Conference 2025, where I'm about to speak with Joseph Carson, who is now Chief Security Evangelist at Segura, and we are going to find out everything about the use of AI in cybersecurity, for good and for bad, and its implication for financial institutions.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to be here, and what a conference to have this interview at. It's such a fun conference, interesting ideas and sessions all week, and this is definitely a hot topic that everyone's really kind of on the edge about what's happening, how is it going, and absolutely, I mean, like all technologies, they can be used for both good and bad.
Yeah, let's start with actually the first question. Let's see, AI is described as a double-edged sword in cybersecurity. From a financial perspective, how can attackers use AI for different types of fraud? Or what are these types of fraud leveraged by AI?
Absolutely, great question. For me, what I help usually in a lot of incidents with the response side and try to look at the attack path and how attackers are using technology and what techniques they're using. So in the past couple of years, I've seen the adoption of AI from an attacker perspective accelerate quite a lot. Now, when you get to conferences, sometimes there's a lot of misleading and FUD, but I'm going to share with you the reality side of things, what I see. Yeah. So the first thing is, what I've seen is the attackers using AI to create much more improved, sophisticated phishing campaigns. So the phishing capability is now so perfection that it's getting so difficult, not just for everyday citizens and employees, but even security professionals are struggling to see authentic versus malicious phishing campaigns. And what that means is that in the past, so organizations, I'm based in Estonia, and the Estonian language has been a protection for society for many years, because it was very difficult to translate using systems and machines to get good campaigns. But in the past year, the artificial intelligence and GPT engines have now been able to make sure that the phishing translations are perfection, so that they're now in the local language, they're accurate, they're very, very authentic looking. So the language side has now basically been a barrier that's been removed for attackers. So no matter what country you're in and what language you speak, you used to depend on the languages at some level of protection, because you used to be able to easily tell from looking at email. You could see lots of mistakes and grammar problems. Those have all gone. And it means that in countries like Estonia, Finland, and other countries, we have to change the way we look at protection, and the language is no longer something we can rely on. So it means security awareness training becomes very, very important to be able to detect. And technology is also very important to be able to help alert and identify those potential phishing campaigns that have used artificial intelligence to create them. So absolutely, phishing, one of the number one techniques that artificial intelligence has really accelerated and made it more difficult to detect and defend against. The other area is also the entry level, is that for attackers, they used to have some need for skill and knowledge and learning. And what we've seen in the past couple of years is the bar being lowered more and more and more, to the point where you only need a laptop and a computer and a good understanding of basically searching, and all of the tools are there for you, AI-based, to help you get into cybercrime. So the bar has lowered so much that literally anyone can become very sophisticated very, very quickly. And that's another challenge, is that we have to now look at how can we accelerate the defenders' training and knowledge to counteract that. So absolutely, the bar has been lowered so low that it's very, very difficult to kind of detect and defend against those scenarios. The next scenario that I've seen heavily used is around, it used to be ransomware, used to be kind of more that focus around destruction and encrypting systems and making them unavailable. In the past year, we've seen data extortion become one of the number one methods. It means they're not encrypting the systems. What they're doing is they're stealing the data and then threatening to disclose that data on the public internet or in third-party locations for those organizations. So they had to do a data extortion ransom demand. And what used to be the case was, when attackers extorted the data, it used to take them months to analyze the data that they stole. They'd have to go through the data to try and find credentials and passwords and financial information and credit card information, personal identifiable information. So going through that data took a long time. What the attackers are now able to do is take that stolen data, put it through a large language model training, and be able to query it on demand for the information they need. So now understanding the data that they stole can take seconds, if not minutes, to be able to go and query it to understand where's all the credentials in this data dump, where's the credit card information, where's the personal identifier information, where's the data that they can monetize. And it means that acceleration means they can have much more meaningful negotiations with the victims to determine what type of ransom they can demand from those organizations. So data exfiltration, extortion, and analyzing that data at scale and at speed is something we also have to find a way to detect and defend against those types of scenarios. The last method, which was quite interesting, is that in the past, kind of end of last year, a lot of times when I do incident response, you get in conversation, you have messaging, you exchange communication with the attackers. And most times the attackers, you're not talking with the hands-on keyboard person, the person who created the malware or the ransomware variant. You tend to be talking to an intermediary, like a third-party support person that those attackers are paying to translate, to communicate, to help you recover and so forth, and to help you pay the cryptocurrency ransom. Now, in the past year, I've seen that evolve significantly to the point where even the attackers are becoming more efficient and more cost-effective, and they've actually replaced a lot of those middle-tier cyber criminals with AI bots. So even cyber criminals are losing their jobs. They're having to retrain and find new areas of work. So those middle-tier criminals who would have done the support and help have been replaced with chatbots. And that changes a lot of things. It means that if you're negotiating or communicating with an attacker, then empathy's gone. You can't negotiate because you've got the systematic chatbot. So that's something those are the areas I've really seen. I've seen, absolutely attackers using campaigns to become much more sophisticated. And the other area as well is deepfakes. And that's another massive advancement, is that the ability either to create fake identities in order to maybe even get employment with companies becomes very, very easy, or the ability to actually take existing employees' identities and create clones of them. Because in our world, we're on social media all the time. We create so much digital footprint, videos, audio, people around you. Your social sphere is recording your life, even if you decide not to. The people around you are. And with that, it means that with an attacker, they can simply gather that data that's on public domains and interfaces and sites. They can use that to create very, very good clones of us online, to the point where it's very, very hard to tell the difference. And this is one of the major areas. It causes problems with things like identity, document fraud, financial fraud, account fraud. A really interesting one I saw recently is where somebody had cloned somebody's identity to the point where they actually put a fake letterbox at the person's address in order to get their meal. So when they get credit cards sent to their actual home address, it goes into that fake letterbox where they've created those fake identities. So they're being very creative. And they're definitely using technology to accelerate and to help them.
Yeah, we all the time say for cyber criminals, but then again, from what you presented here, it seems that actually they have quite business model with a group that is doing something, a mastermind, and sometimes intermediary that can be replaced by a bot. Yeah. Can you narrow the discussion here and name some of the, let's say, hotspots around the globe that where cyber criminals are located? What are these areas where?
I mean, it's quite challenging. You've got the masterminds, which are in some countries where, of course, there's lots of sanctions in place and lots of noise. So what they've done is, in those countries where the sanctions are in place, they have created proxy criminal gangs, like affiliates in a criminal ecosystem.
Oh my God.
I have seen countries where the likes of Sri Lanka being a challenge, Myanmar, Vietnam. And I think it's important, really. I mean, the good thing is those countries are looking at the laws. The problem is the laws are not current with the current technology and current cyber criminal landscape. So those countries, hoping that they will implement new laws that will make it more difficult for those criminals to act within the countries, because they're able to bypass some of the legal realms, and that causes an issue. So I know that those countries are working. They're looking to make sure that they're not safe havens for cyber criminals, and hopefully there's less places in the world for them to operate from. But yeah, sanctions does play a big part in deterrence, and I am a bit worried that in the near future, if sanctions do get lifted, it will open up a whole new wave of cybercrime. So that's a concern that I do have. So hopefully, as part of kind of any types of changes to sanctions, that at least the cyber criminal is part of the kind of a deterrent to make sure that they're not still having a safe place to operate.
Yeah. So I think we had enough with the bad,
Yes.
the bad things happening, so we can switch on the other side. You hinted to some things like employee training and getting along with technology. So how can AI be used by the good guys, by cybersecurity specialists, and how difficult it is?
So the great thing is, I mean, as I mentioned, cybercriminals are starting to use it more and more, and specifically in those areas.
Yes.
The great thing is most of the advancements in AI in the past, 5+ years has been on the defense side. So the defense is actually really invested and actually accelerated more than the criminal side, which is great. So we're using AI for good more.
Yeah.
And the areas that I've seen it been heavily used is around, when we think of AI, we have to think of it, a lot of people look at it from fear. Is it going to take away my job?
Yeah.
But it actually, in most cases, it doesn't. What it does, I see AI as a superpower. The term I used when I actually had my keynote this week was that I see it as, if you think about the game Wipeout, or you think about Super Mario Kart, and I always call it like the mushroom in Super Mario Kart is AI, because when you actually get that mushroom, it makes you stronger, faster, it makes you like superpower. Doesn't make you better. You still have to navigate and control and become effective. You still have to learn how to use it properly. So yes, learning how to use AI is just as important as deploying AI tools.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that people know how to use it properly and they get as much value. But on the defensive side, the great thing is around, imagine you're deploying a new solution and the documentation, there's thousands of pages of documentation, which some of it might apply to you and some of it might not. And what's the point in time of reading all that documentation?
Yeah.
What you can now do is take that documentation, put it into a GPT engine and say, I am doing this role. Summarize all the things from this actually thousands of pages of documentation that is applicable to me.
Yeah.
Or I want to basically look at this documentation and just query it. I need to deploy an agent on these systems with this type of configuration. And it will even create the configuration file for you. So you can actually go and, so it's accelerating the things we need to do. And this key is the natural language processing, natural language understanding, the large language models, the training models, the machine learning. They all contribute to AI-powered enabled systems. But it's really important that we stick with context. It's important that, because a lot of AI systems, they can create a lot of noise. And we have to make sure that we actually try to think about the value that they're adding. How is it helping us do something better? In the defense side, the areas is automating and creating documentation is accelerating. We're now seeing virtual assistants becoming very popular, where I don't need to become a specialist in everything. I've got my agents that are specialists in those areas, and now I can chat with the agents in order to get their feedback and to improve and to help me find things or delegate tasks to those agents.
Yeah.
I want them to do the work for me. So that's another area where we're seeing efficiencies and acceleration, is those agents becoming almost like clones of myself, but they have very specific tasks to achieve. And that's exciting. And the other area is basically around data analysts, analyzing data at mass and at scale. There's so many reports in this industry that come out every year, and I don't have time to read all of them. I select a few, but now what I have time to do is take those white papers and research documents and analyze them and query them. I have the engine go through and create summaries based on my preferences, based on my queries. So accessing, accelerating, and understanding and analyzing data, as I mentioned, the attackers are using it to understand about what, sensitive data they've stolen. We can use it to look for indicators of compromise, to look for suspicious activities across many, many data sets at speed and at scale. That's significant. The things that would take us a long time to do. So what we're really doing right now is we're using AI-powered engines to go faster.
Yeah.
And we just hope that it's just like a Formula One race. You've got the one that you don't want to win and the one that you do want to win, and you just hope that what you've done to those engines, to that data, to the performance, to the effectiveness, to still be ahead, to still be faster. And that's what the race we're in. It's a race of speed, of analyzing data. And it comes down to a couple of things, is that the quality of the data that you have, how well the algorithm that you're using is,
Exactly.
and the computational power.
Actually, I was about to interrupt you regarding having a Super Mario speed, but then again, it's also about the quality of the results.
Correct.
So for you, I think in a way, not necessarily it's easier, but you have a trained eye, and when the AI then hallucinates, you kind of, you have the critical thinking, and you can ask for more inputs to double check if it's
Correct.
okay.
Correct.
But then I have the feeling that people like me that are not exposed to this may take by heart or they believe what the AI system says, and an error might be perpetrated. So how can we avoid, to, I don't know, take for as a truth everything the AI says?
So this gets into the risk scoring and the risk scoring and the accuracy level of the data set. So not all data is equal. Not all data has been validated and corrected and made sure that
But who validates this data?
Well, there's different types of data sets. There's data that absolutely must be accurate. If it's math-based,
oh, okay, yeah,
it should be accurate.
Yeah,
Those models should never be wrong.
Yeah,
if they are wrong, that's a really bad algorithm that's in misinterpreting that data. But it really gets into the accuracy of the data. Is that who's doing the machine learning? So opening up to a large amount of data, your accuracy level goes down significantly. Being very, very persistent, very concise about the data, you have to make sure that somebody has went through and validated the correctness of that data before you make it available to
somebody
be
here you're referring an expert or also machine?
Expert or machine. Machines,
could be, okay.
If your algorithm is correctly set, you can quickly filter through all the false positives.
Yeah.
And it's all about using those false positives in order to train the model, in order for correctness.
Yeah.
Some of the engines today are trying to achieve that, where they're providing sources that you can now go and validate the accuracy. But for me right now, I haven't seen many where I would trust the output. Even when it comes to creating code templates, I have to go and validate and check the templates myself.
Yeah.
It's good for creating a framework or a starting point, but you have to have the mindset and the knowledge to check accuracy. And that's where the human is right now.
The zero trust
mentality. Zero trust, zero assumptions mentality, where it's all about, I want to make sure. So at the moment, my confidence level is, it's not so high with the system. So I tend to go through and double check and triple check everything. Or I get multiple engines to if they come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
That actually, kind of brings a higher confidence. So if I have maybe 3 different AI engines that have different types of data sets and different types of algorithms, but if I actually ask the question and they all come to the same conclusion, then my confidence increases.
Yeah. So now thinking about the paper's audience that are more financials, and this is a very risk-averse and highly compliant industry.
Yes.
And you mentioned the use of lots of data, types of data, risk scoring for data. How can banks deploy AI systems to fight all these types of fraud that you mentioned?
One of the biggest,
being compliant and avoiding some of the risks.
So I was fortunate enough to be, a couple of years ago, I was part of the subject matter experts for working groups for the EU AI Act. And I thought it was very interesting. It took a little bit of a different approach than what GDPR did in the past. It took a more risk-based approach rather than data-based approach. And that it meant that it was very, very clear into how the implications, the risk of that data can, or the risk of those using AI can actually have to human life. So what it comes down to, in the last year, lots of organizations have either knowingly or unknowingly having AI deployed throughout their environments. We have the issue of shadow AI. We've got the issue of employees going and acquiring AI systems knowingly. So what that means is that we might be acquiring solutions that are enabling AI in the background that we have no idea about. And all of a sudden, now you've got your data getting queried by those AI systems. Some examples are transcription in Teams meetings that are now transcribing your meetings. And now, is that data going to a private location? Is it staying within your environment? Is it going to a cloud environment? Many people don't know. They just, now you've got transcriptions, and you might be having a very sensitive financial meeting, a legal meeting, an acquisitional meeting, and all of a sudden that's been transcribed and maybe available publicly without your knowledge. So shadow AI is a big problem. So most organizations in the past year, they're trying to regain control of that. And what they've done is that they've rolled out AI policies from the top down, saying, oh, this is what you can and can't do. And it really comes down to is that I think in addition to the AI policies, you really want to understand about what's the most important questions you want to get answered that will help you with your business, will help you with security, will help you with detecting fraud, it will help you with defending systems. What's those most important questions? And when you have the questions, then it allows you to think about, well, where's the data that will help me answer those questions? Can it be actually gathered and accelerated using AI algorithms? So then taking a risk-based approach, and you have to then think about is that now I'm starting to use those models in order to help me go faster, but it's also important to maintain security. So not only do we have the issue of making sure that we have visibility of shadow AI and regaining control and putting governance and compliance in those areas, but we also have to protect those systems as well, because if an attacker ever gains access to those systems, then you have a massive issue. They can change the data sets, they can create false positives, they can create disinformation, they can query it and get the same intelligence so they know how to bypass things. So it's really important that not only as we start using it more, but we have to protect it more. And that gets into is how do you protect those systems? It's through access, it's through identities. So it really becomes important to protect the identities that have access to those query models, or the how the data has been trained, what data sets are being used, the agents themselves, how they're protected. And this really becomes a very, very critical thing. The more you start using it, you have to get those so correct and so well, the strategy, the policy around the usage, and that policy should also be governed by the regulation side of things. And then understanding about, okay, what's the questions? Then what's the data that answer those questions? Where's that data located? Do you have control? And when you put that data through the algorithms and the AI models, how do you make sure that it's not, implicating or breaching the regulatory side of things? So it becomes really important that you have to understand where your data is moving to, and who else has visibility of it and who has control of it, to really helping you. One is use it to the value that you need it, but also protect it and adhering to the regulations that you must adhere to, whether it being GDPR or the EU AI Act. I think that's what organizations really need to accelerate, is how they get as much value. Just because AI is there and just because you can use it doesn't mean you should. And the second part is one of the things from the EU AI Act that I worked on many years ago was around that when you use it, it always has to be right. There's no room for failure. So the more that you make it from autonomous, because today most of the AI is automated. We have users who are looking at it and observing and making actions or decisions based on it. More and more, we're starting to see the autonomous come into play. We've seen autonomous very much in robotics and manufacturing, but now it's coming into the digital world, and we have to make sure that it's always correct. So it gets into the other point is that as you deploy and use it, you want to treat it nicely. Because it will learn. And if you're using it, then we want to use it and how we want to be treated. Because at some point in time, it might actually treat us the way we treat it, and that becomes quite an interesting future.
Yeah, since you mentioned about treatment and feelings, I have the feeling that this discussion with you was a carousel of emotions. AI can be used for bad, for good. It can be on the back for transcribing information and you don't know about it. Data being so intricate, again, AI can pick it up and you might never know what response gives. You also have to treat AI kindly. So if you were to I don't know, say it in one paragraph, how can banks be ready, or financial institutions over the next 5 years in this age of AI? How can they be prepared? What should they do?
I think it comes down to is that, think about, it all comes back to your data. It's the understanding of what data you have, what's the risk of that data, how well you can automate and aggregate it and accelerate it to make as much value as possible, and do risk assessments, and always make sure you're applying the regulatory side of things as well. I think in the financial industry specifically, I think the most value that they can get from AI over the next 3 to 5 years is around 3 main areas. Is it can help them actually automate and make governance, regulation, and compliance much more easier. They've got lots of
Yeah.
data. Now they can actually say, I've got this security policy that's applied to ISO 27000, or it might be a SOC 1 or SOC 2 compliance. Go and find where this is applied properly and where it's not.
Yeah.
That's exciting, is how quickly they can query those data sets and look at rules and look at policies, enforcements, and compliance. I think that's probably one of the areas that can be heavily leveraged in the coming years. The other thing is definitely around is analyzing the indicators of compromise. Is they've got lots of sensors, lots of data, and having those systems work coherently, almost to the point where it's almost like a living organism, is that those systems are working together, they're creating different events and different logs. And if you're able to understand that data set much better, you can start looking for suspicious activity. You can look for anomalies. And doing that at speed can definitely reduce the risk very, very, very quickly. And the third thing is around the ability to look at access to the data. I think as you start using those more and more, identity access management, authentication, authorization, privilege access becomes so essential to protecting the systems, because as we become more dependent on them, we want to make sure that we don't leave the vulnerability that attackers can use that against us. Because in the past, the attackers live off the land. When they get access to the environment, they tend to use your own tools against you. That double-edged sword again, is that if we don't protect it, it can be used against us. So yes, as we use it for governance, risk, and compliance, and do more automation, as we use it for better, basically, SOC decisions and accelerate around suspicious activity, and again, we need to protect it as well. So those would be the three things I'd recommend, definitely in the financial industry, around prioritization. And at the same time, you must always run the risk assessment into, is it going to help you, and is it going to benefit the business itself?
Yeah, great. So, Joseph, all the time the meetings and the encounters with you bring fresh ideas, fresh perspectives. So thank you for today's interview, and I look forward to continue our conversations.
Excellent. Many thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm always excited to share my insights and knowledge with you and the audience.
Great. Thank you.